Last week, a Montana man was arrested for having a 1/16 of an ounce of pot on him, barely enough to roll a joint. And Montana is generally considered a fairly conservative state. So this guy's facing drug possession charges, but his case never went to trial. The reason why is amazing. The judge in the case could not seat a jury willing to convict the man. In pretrial interviews, this is before people knew who he was, what the crime was, how much pot he had, anything. One potential juror after another, one after another, said they would not be willing to find someone guilty for only having a few buds of marijuana in their possession. Eventually, because he couldn't find jurors, the judge was forced to call a recess, acknowledging there was no way he could put together a fair jury. During that recess, a plea deal was worked out, and the man essentially got off without admitting any guilt. The judge in this case, Dusty Deschamps, claimed that in his 30 years on the bench, 30 years on the bench, he'd never seen anything like it. I say, let's hope we continue to see more of the same. Every year, at least 50,000 people die in our country due to alcohol. 50,000. In the history of our nation, and even the 200 years before we officially became the United States of America, a nation, you know how many people died from a dose of marijuana, or an overdose, or a massive dose? Zero. 500 years on this continent, not a single person, and tens of thousands of years before that, Native Americans. Nobody has ever died from pot. We have this bizarre double standard in our country that we have legalized and even embraced to a certain extent the use of alcohol, but we vilify pot and its users. It makes no sense. Alcohol causes long-term dementia. It corrodes your liver, and it can cause death when overdosed. Pot does none of those things. It may affect your short-term memory, but only while you're high. I mean, both drugs produce a mild intoxication, and marijuana's side effects pale in comparison to alcohol. So if any of these two drugs should be illegal, which should it be? Not to mention the enormous medical benefits of pot. Benefits that 15 states and Washington, D.C. have now recognized by legalizing medical marijuana. The only people pot has killed are those who've been locked up for its possession and had their lives forever altered because of it. When I was a kid, a friend of mine went to prison for pot. He was a good friend. It destroyed him. It broke him. When he came back, he was never the same again. 2 grams, and then our criminal justice system ruins your life. This is insanity. Our prisons are overpopulated, and more than 10% of all the offenders are guilty of pot-related offenses. If we legalize this, we immediately solve this problem. Not to mention the tens of billions of dollars that can be saved by not enforcing marijuana laws in our nation's war on drugs, a black hole of financial waste and ineffective law enforcement. In November, Prop 19 failed in California. It would have legalized small amounts of pot for personal use. While support for legalization is growing, it's not quite strong enough to take on special interest corporations who have a lot of money at stake to ensure that pot isn't legal. In the meantime, I think we should pursue the strategy of a few dozen jurors in Montana. Next time we receive that jury summons in the mail, think of it as a chance to exercise some political activism. Let's all take a stand and refuse to convict people for simple marijuana possession. It's our duty as a jury of peers.